Bent or broken, it's the family tree. Each branch a part of me. This is my tree, and it's a beautiful tree.
My Aunt Sherry found old diaries from someone named Mary Moore dating all the way back to 1866. In these excerpts, she talks about her great-grandfather from 1662.
John Moore of Lancaster was representative in 1689 and 1690. He married Ann Smith, had a son named John Moore, she's old, born April 1662. I think he was my great-grandfather. That's as far back as we can go.
Now let's fast forward about 121 years to my grandmother's side, also known as the Irvins. Isaiah Tucker Irvin was born in 1783 and died in 1856 from blood poisoning. He was appointed captain in the first-class militia, then became a major. He later became a member of the Georgia House of Representatives from 1828 to 1834. The Irvins' 3,000-acre plantation house also holds part of their legacy in Wilkes. Isaiah Tucker Irvin I made this house in 1835 for other Irvins to inherit. Currently, it's a bed and breakfast. There's also been a report of $100,000 of treasure lost in Wilkes. Rumors believe it's still out there and possibly buried near the plantation. He had one son named Isaiah Tucker Irvin, Jr., who was born in 1819. He married Elizabeth Joyner and had one son named William Howlett Irvin. In 1860, Isaiah died in a steamboat explosion. He was also Speaker of the Georgia House of Representatives. As a tribute, the Georgia Artillery Battalion was named as the Irvin Artillery, and the 9th Georgia Infantry Regiment are now referred to as the Irvin Guards. He would have been the next state governor. William Howlett Irvin was born in 1842. He was the chief of police in Wilkes, Georgia, where his family lived for generations. His town regarded him as an honorable, good man that gave no fear to crime. He died in 1904 from blood poisoning. William Howlett and Hattie Ann had Isaiah Tucker Irvin III in 1874. He married Carrie Mae Saulnier. They had 7 kids. He served in the Civil War for the Confederate. He died in 1949. Of Isaiah's children, Robert Raymond, born November 2, 1920, was the only one to continue the Irvin name. He married Doris Winifred Franklin. They had 4 children who are now my grandmother, great-aunt, and uncles. In 1969, he died of cancer. On March 7, 1948, Virginia Birch was born.
My father, I always knew he loved me, but he was not like a huggy, kissy guy. I always kissed him goodnight before I went to bed. Never, ever talked back to my father or my mother, ever in my life. My mother, she and I got along. We would laugh. Mother and my father were like to have a good time when they were younger. They just weren't right for each other. I think my father probably always loved my mother, but you put them in the room together, they just start bickering.
She married William Guyler Birch and had one daughter, Heather Birch. Heather Birch was born on October 3, 1975. She worked as a model for various different companies, and she's currently a photographer. She has 3 kids, Ashley, Amanda, and me. I also found some interesting stories on my grandmother's side. It begins with Horace Taplin, who was born in 1825. He married Tilton Comfort. They had Alden Burt Taplin in 1860. He married Florence Gerald. Together, they had Alden Taplin, Jr. He lived in Andover, Massachusetts. A World War II U.S. Air Force veteran and a sales representative, he constructed telescopes in his free time and even donated them to the Proctor Academy. Over time, he would be the great-grandfather to my great-grandmother. Florence Gerald's father was considered the trolley king in Fairfield, Maine. He also fell in love with racehorses and enjoyed raising them. He also invented a drop-head sewing machine, electrified the Waterville horse line, and started the Portland and Brunswick Railway, all while building the Gerard Hotel and Casco Castle. And to think if his father wasn't shanghaied off the coast of Ireland, none of this would have happened. Looking over at the Franklin side, Joseph Reading Franklin would marry Mary A. Gordon. Their son, Gordon Benjamin Franklin, would marry Amy Estelle Meany, who apparently was really mean. Gordon Benjamin Franklin, Jr. was written in a local newspaper because he was stranded in Greensboro, North Carolina when he was 16 with a 14-year-old boy, and they were both considered possible runaways. He died in 1995. On my grandfather's side, I have documents tracing all the way back to 1842 when John Birch was born. His son, William Weldon, married Florence Harewell. They had a son named Walter James, whom remarried multiple times. Walter's son, Walter Jackson Birch, married Lillian McAnally. However, he later divorced and married 3 more times. Lillian and Walter had 3 children, William, Pat, and Valerie.
I had a difficult childhood, but I think what it did was make me stronger because I didn't want to have my children go through what I went through, and so I just tried to work harder. I skipped a couple of grades, and I went into the Marine Corps when I was 16. I was supposed to be, I would have had to have been 18, but I got a forged birth certificate.
His mother was very young, and his father was like 20 years older than her.
She was 16, he was 32. Yeah. Strange stuff. And when I was a kid, I tore everything apart. I tore my mother's watch apart into every little piece.
You wanted to know how things worked.
Yeah. And I took record players apart, and I took everything apart I could possibly take apart and put back together, just to see how it worked.
I talked to my great-aunt Sherry, grandma, and grandfather about what it was like growing up in their days.
The thing I remember the most about my grandparents is that they would travel every year from Maine to Florida. They had a home for the summer in Maine and a home for the winter in Deltona, Florida. They would stop off in Virginia on their way there and stay for a day or 2. She was an eccentric woman. She was really cool, though. When we traveled one time down to Florida during Christmas break to see her, she took me to, I don't know the name of the park, but some sort of animal theme park. And she actually got up and held a blue indigo snake. And we have some old Super 8 movies of her doing this. Held it around her neck, and she was in her late 60s, if not 70 by that time. So that was pretty neat. I loved her to pieces. Grampy. He always had a quarter in his pocket. He'd be like, "What's this? What's this? You better get it." And I'd reach in his pocket and pull out a quarter. So that was always a big deal back then because a quarter was, of course, worth a lot more than it is now. Cut.
You didn't have to worry about anybody grabbing you. We had things like with the car hops, like a Dairy Queen. That was a big treat to go out for ice cream.
The movie was 25 cents.
Yes.
And you could go to the movies and get all kinds of different things in the candy case for like a nickel.
Have some old Super 8 movies.
Saturdays were the only days that cartoons came on. There were no gruesome movies. I mean, The Blob was like terrible to go see something like that. Nobody locked their doors.
Your neighbors knew you and wanted to help you. They all knew you by name in most places.
I was probably about 13, something like that, when the transistor radio came out.
But there wasn't any drugs, and there wasn't people getting all strung out and messed up. It was like Happy Days, the show Happy Days. It was really like that in the 50s and 60s.
But it was happy. It was easy.
She always had little clippings in her suitcase when she'd stay.
You would pick up the phone and you would say, "This is BR769 or something."
Mine was Sunset. Nobody got a car. Some boys did if they worked in shop.
She'd break it open and show me the little insides where it looks like seagulls and things.
Get 50 cents worth of gas and drive all over the place.
Overall, I learned a lot about my ancestry. I'm even related to the Pillsburys through marriage, not those. So, there you have it. This is my ancestry project. Thank you.